All right, I am really zoomed in. I don't know how to use cameras. Hello! I don't know where to look, probably the lens. Okay, we're at Home Depot and we're about to get a skid rower. Dang it! Oh, I really tried. I was like, I think that's, I keep calling it that.
Yeah, that was a good try.
Okay, we are about to get a skid steer because we're about to renovate our entire backyard and it's gonna be pretty dope. It's gonna be the start of something probably super beautiful, but extremely time consuming and exhausting. So here we go, are you ready?
Oh no, I'm not, but it's okay.
Cool. Wish us luck. It begins. How are we feeling?
Time to have fun.
Time to have fun.
If 12-year-old me could see me now.
I know, right?
Alright, wanna get some food?
Yeah.
Hungry. So this is the area that we're gonna be working on. We're gonna be basically tearing all this up and putting down a patio in this area over here. It's gonna lead up over to here where we're gonna build up the garden that we have. So basically the plan is that we're gonna basically dig this whole thing out and we're gonna try to do our best at grading this thing along with how the yard kind of slopes naturally. Now, I am not a landscaper or anything like that, but I'm just a dude that's not afraid to try stuff. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna dig this stuff out and try to see if we can make it work. And yeah, that's basically it. Your angle's like real steep. There you go.
That makes sense?
I mean, kind of, you're like a foot in the air.
I'm trying to like dig and pop it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it could work. Just to get you started. But I think you just gotta kind of like slide into it.
Is that too deep?
I mean, that's okay. That's okay, you're doing good. Alright, so we got this primarily dug out. I gotta level this thing out a bit. We gotta go about 2 more inches down and we should be pretty good. It's kind of tricky though because as the wheels of that thing kind of land in certain spots, we have to adjust the bucket. It's a lot harder than it looks, but it's definitely helping us get this thing dug out a lot faster than if we were just using a shovel. So let's get back in there. Oh man, this thing is massive. Oh, here we go. Helps if I take the e-brake off. Let's do this thing. Come on now. I should not be allowed to do this. Oh my god. This thing does not sound happy. Might need a little bit of hydraulic fluid or something. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. It's alright though. It's just a rental, so. Oh my gosh. Man, I can't wait to hear all the comments about how I'm not doing this right. That does not sound good. I'm sorry. I may not know farm equipment, but I know engines and shit. Shouldn't be making that kind of noise. So either I'm doing something wrong, or maybe this thing's just a little bit low on fluid. Just realized I got the lights on too. That was from last night. We were out here kind of late trying to kind of level this thing out. I don't know if this is the proper way to do this, but it seems to be working. And as I roll over it, seems to be packing it back down. Now we're looking a little bit more level. A little bit of a grade. Hey, look at that. That's pretty good. That seems to be doing the trick. Oh man. At this rate, I'm never going to get done.
So we ended up having to return the skid steer a little bit before we wanted to. So the rest of this I ended up having to do by hand. Problem is, I lost all the footage I had of doing this. I actually laid out a whole bunch of weed barrier just to try to prevent any of that coming up in the future. And we got a whole bunch of road base that we had to put in there and kind of spread around. That took me way longer than I originally planned because I was trying to figure out how to grade it, how to put it in there properly. Like, it was its own fiasco, and I don't know where any of the footage for that stuff is. So I'm sorry that I don't have that, but after we got it all laid out, then we ended up taking this little compactor that I rented. I think it was like $100 a day, something like that. And we basically just did laps around this thing to try to press everything down, and then I'd get the road base kind of wet just to kind of help it press in a little bit more. But it's kind of a pain to do because this thing's pretty heavy and it doesn't really want to move too well, but luckily the guys over at Sunbelt helped us out quite a bit with the rental. They ended up letting me use it for 2 days but only charged me for 1. So shout out to those guys for really hooking it up, because this job is a pretty major deal, and sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of help where you can.
So excited, it's so loud, and we're almost done. I'm just kidding, we're not done. Not at all, but we're doing our best. Wow, I'm a terrible camera person. Doing our best.
So after we compacted all the road base down, we got it all nice and leveled out and graded, then it was time to move on to our leveling agent. We ended up using this stuff called decomposed granite. I want to say I was charged like $75 a yard, and we ended up needing quite a bit of this stuff. We basically just went wheelbarrow by wheelbarrow, tearing this stuff all the way to the backyard, dropping it out and raking it even with a rake, just to get it kind of close, kind of get a ballpark of where everything is, trying to make sure we have the right depth and everything, because we still needed about 1 inch to 2 inches for the flagstone, which moves on to the next phase, which is screeding. Now what I did here is I basically took some conduit pipe, laid it along my string lines, and I would measure all the way down to make sure I had the right height. So if I needed 9 inches, I'd go 9 inches all the way down. Luckily the decomposed granite moves really well and it's real easy to pack. So if there's any holes left, I would just go back and fill it with a shovel, and then that'd be pretty much it. This seemed to work out really well for me, and I think it'll do really well on the other side of the yard as well.
Alright, so I got this thing on here pretty good. The next thing I'm going to do is start laying out the flagstone. I'm going to try not to ruin this too much, and I'm just kind of go with the big pieces on the edge and just kind of puzzle piece this thing together. Now comes the fun part of undoing this thing and getting all these heavy ass flagstones out of here. I got that 1 pallet there. I got a full pallet and a half pallet. It's about 8,000 pounds of this stuff. So yeah, I got a lot of work ahead of me.
So let me tell you, one of the easiest ways to transport these things is going to be with a wheelbarrow, because doing these pieces like 1 by 1 and having to walk all that distance, yeah, you'll be getting like 50,000 steps a day. It ain't worth it.
Made it just in time. Didn't want to lose the camera. But yeah, making pretty good progress so far. So yeah, I've got it all in pretty rough, but it's just tough because they're all so many different sizes and shapes and depths, but it's coming along pretty good so far.
So now this is the part where it starts to get really tedious. And if you have any amount of OCD, it's gonna drive you mad, okay? Like, basically what I'm trying to do is make this thing look imperfectly perfect, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of trying to mix up a mash of like large pieces with small pieces. I want there to be a pattern, but not too obvious of a pattern, if that makes sense. And it was at this point that I realized my wheelbarrow was driving me absolutely insane because it wouldn't stop squealing. I took the squeaky wheel off, put some grease on it, and we were good to go. Now, my girlfriend had a great idea for masking out where we were going to put these garden beds, and that was before we packed everything down, we just used a stick and started drawing out our lines as to where we wanted everything to be. Now, this was kind of nice because we could get an idea of how close it was to the edge, how far out it was, whether or not we could fit a wheelbarrow in and out of there. So we were able to really kind of rough draft this thing before we actually put in the flagstone. And then that way we knew also where we were going to put the flagstone to make spaces for the new garden beds. So shout out to her, this was a great idea.
So this actually worked out really well. We've got it kind of drawn out where we're going to put everything. We're going to have kind of like this L bracket over here for the garden. We're going to have this like centerpiece here and then just like a long runner. And I think it's going to work out. So actually marking everything out like this kind of worked out nicely because it's nice and wet, it gives us a nice hard outline. And it's real easy because we like drew this like 5 different times trying to find the right shape. So I think we finally got something we're going to settle on. So now what I'm going to do is try to level this thing out again so we get more of that stone in here. So I'm basically taking it to these lines. We're going to measure down 8 inches and then just kind of go the rest of the way with it. The centerpiece over here I had a little bit of trouble, so I ended up just using one of my old weights that I made and just put a stake in it because I didn't want to go through the weed barrier in the bottom. So it seems to be working. I've got it lined up with this line here, which is at 8 inches, and then just ran it all the way down there, and yeah, we'll see how it does.
So now comes the point where we get to cover up all our sins with that skid steer and level everything out completely. Now, I just used the same technique here with the screeding that we did on the other area. But the thing is, this side I had a lot more imperfections with how level it was, and I had to add a lot of material, especially on the outside point, because it was way off. But once we got all screeded out, it looked great, and it was time to start moving the rest of these flagstones. Now, we used cardboard to kind of lay out where our garden beds were going to go. That way we would have an easier time when it came to selecting the right stones to go in there, because trying to pick the right size shapes was kind of tricky because, again, we want this to be a pattern that's kind of noticeable, but not too obvious. Like, I want the pattern to be as irregularly regular as possible, if that makes any sense at all.
All right, so I got this thing roughly put in here. You can kind of tell how it's all kind of just loosely in here. I'm probably going to come back and double check and kind of fill in a lot of these voids and make a bunch of cuts. We've got the garden beds, like mock garden beds set up. You can kind of see the layout of this thing. This stupid cardboard kept getting blown away, but it's fine. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start making those garden beds. So we kind of prematurely started making the beds, and this one's a 4x8. It just turned out that with the space that we had, it wasn't fitting too well with the design we wanted. So I'm going to end up cutting this thing up to make it fit for the big box. So that's what we're going to do first. Alright, so this is the rough sketch. Basically what I'm going to end up using is some of the sections I can for that L piece from this big piece here. We're going to kind of cut it up and make it fit. And then we're going to do the same thing for that 4-foot box. And then also we're going to make some fresh cuts for this 2x12. So I'm going to kind of just use what I have and kind of just make it work. So let's get to work.
So as it turns out, using screws is actually a really good thing for this because we were able to tear it completely down and reuse most of the wood from the project. It just meant I was going to have to make 100 cuts. Like, it was a lot of cutting, but eventually we got it all out. Then it was just a matter of clamping all the corners together and screwing them together because these are what we were going to use to brace most of the pieces. And then I took like a good solid, like probably 10 minutes trying to figure out, do these pieces go on the inside, the outside, how far is the edge? Like, I don't know, sometimes measurements can be confusing, but eventually we figured it out and we were able to start assembling the bed. Problem is that I actually cut it short because my camera died, so I didn't get the finished product on this particular bed, but don't worry, we got it on the second one because it was just a simple square. That one was way easier to put together, and we basically just screwed it all together, drilled it up, and it was good to go. But unfortunately, we had to make another trip to the hardware store because I ran out of lumber yet again. Just meant we were going to have to make another trip to get more supplies just to get these boxes built. But luckily, once we got it all laid out, it was pretty easy. I would just take the wood, do a bunch of measurements, figure out what we needed, and then just make a couple of cuts to make sure that we got it all correct. Now, you know what they say, measure twice, cut once. Problem is a lot of times I mess up and I end up measuring 3 times and cutting 10 because, you know, it's just how it goes sometimes, you know, but it's all right. We get it eventually. And then we just had to do this cutting about 1,000 more times just to make sure that we had all the pieces that we need. Once I had them all organized, I'd walk them down and get them all kind of prepped for the next step, which was going to be making all the corners. Now, once I got all the corners done up, we basically had everything where we needed it, and we just needed to assemble the entire bed. Now, it took a little bit longer than I originally planned because we ended up pre-drilling the entire thing before screwing everything in, but we just worked our way from the bottom up, and it took us a little while to get it done, but in the end it ended up coming out pretty good. But we weren't done yet. We still needed to do the top ledge pieces for these boxes, which just included doing a bunch of 45-degree cuts because we want to make sure that it lines up really well and it creates like a nice space for us to put everything when we're working on these garden beds.
Well, that took way longer than I thought it would. Looks pretty good though. Oops. Killed a spider. Sorry, buddy. Okay, so we got 3 garden beds that are done. They look good, but they're not quite ready. They're completely untreated. We need to treat these things and seal them up as best we can. Problem is, we're going to be putting vegetables and fruit in this thing, and I don't want to make myself sick. So what we're going to do is we're going to first stain it using a natural technique called wood burning. Okay, so this is the technique. We're going to take our little propane torch, we're going to do our little test piece, and we'll burn it. Just basically trying to get to just before it burns to change the color. Once we start seeing smoke, we're going to stop. I'm just going to do this on the whole piece. Alright, now we're just going to sand it back. It's a little bit messy. Alright, that's good enough. So I could refine this a little bit, but you can kind of see just all the different grain patterns and everything. It looks really good. It's kind of dark right now. I could lighten it up by sanding it more, or I could make it darker by sanding it less. So it really just depends on personal preference, but it's pretty good for just burning it. Now I just have to do that on all 3 of these. So last night I started burning this thing down with the propane torch. Problem is that this thing works really well in a small area or if I'm trying to like fine tune things, but it was not doing a good job in terms of getting all of this done because I got 3 massive beds that I need to do. So I ended up going to Lowe's and I got one of those big propane torches. Problem was that it just plain didn't work. It was crap. We hooked it up, it just wouldn't get a consistent flame. It kept burning out. It was junk. So then I tried going to another store. They didn't have it, but luckily Harbor Freight saved the day. So I ended up picking up one of these, and luckily this thing seems to be working pretty good. It's about $35 at Harbor Freight. And this one even has an igniter built in it. Pretty good. I think that's going to be a lot faster.
The main benefit of using this torch over, say, using the small torch is that it's a much broader flame, so it covers a larger surface area when we're using it, and it makes it a lot easier for doing these bigger spaces, because trying to do it with that little torch was just not going to cut it.
Well, I definitely need to fine tune it a little bit, but it's definitely faster.
That looks really cool.
The hardest part about using this torch was trying to balance the darkness of the burns, because some places I would burn way too much and it got really dark, and some places I didn't burn quite enough. So it was all about like kind of going back over it to make sure it was as consistent and even in color as possible, because eventually I'm gonna have to go ahead and clean all this up anyway, but the torch definitely made quick work of this stuff. My only advice is make sure to have water on hand, because there were several times I lit these boxes on fire doing this.
Well, it was a lot easier than using that little blowtorch. I got a little bit more work to do just to get this blended a little bit better, but overall, looks pretty good. So I guess now the next thing is gonna be sanding these things down. Basically, I'm trying to remove all the carbon from when we burned it, because there's a lot of powder and charcoal from when this thing burned. And I'm trying to kind of even out the stain a little bit, so it takes a little bit of work to get that just right. And then afterwards, I ended up using a wire brush to try to get it a little bit closer. Especially in some of the places where there's a little bit more buildup and getting in between the grooves, kind of gets rid of some of that like alligator skin looking stuff, just to smooth it out just a little bit better from where it was, and that seemed to help a lot. After that, I ended up taking a rag and getting it a little bit wet and then wiping everything down just to kind of remove anything else that was left behind, and if there was anything else, I blew it all out with a air compressor. So we should be good, nice, clean, and dry. So the next thing that we got to do is basically get the tung oil and the orange oil, mix it all up, and then we're gonna go ahead and try to paint it on with some brushes. I'm gonna see if that works. I don't know. We're just gonna kind of try it out and see. Oh, it smells like nuts.
Tung oil smells like nuts because it's made with nuts. This isn't your grandmother's peanut butter, luckily. We have some orange oil to balance out the smell. Now it smells like we mix orange juice and peanut butter. That's nasty.
Let's take this concoction of nature and spread it all over these boxes. Turns out these boxes love the taste of oranges and peanut butter because they soaked it right up. I sure hope this protects these garden boxes, 'cause I don't wanna do this again.
So unfortunately, yesterday it actually rained and everything got kind of wet, but I think it's still sealed up pretty good. I'm probably gonna have to do another coat, unfortunately, because it's still soaking up water in some places, so I'm gonna have to get more oil. So in the meantime, I'm gonna start working on cutting a lot of these pieces and trying to get these things to fit a little bit better. So now I've got everything kind of laid out loosely so I can kind of pick the pieces that I need, and I'm basically gonna be trimming it up, because you'll see here I've got some pieces where there's like a nice little cutout where it's not as thick as it should be. So I'm going to kind of use that, just kind of roughly cut this, because I still want the shape to be natural, but I don't want these huge lips that could be a problem. All right, so basically I'm going to take my little cutoff wheel. I'm using one of these masonry blades. It's basically a diamond blade. We'll see how well it works. I got it a little bit wet, and now I'm just going to try to cut along this edge. So see what happens. Oh man. Battery would die. All right, let's try this again. See if this works. Yeah, that does work. Yep, that worked. And now we got a nice clean piece. And that I'm not gonna trip on. Sweet. Okay, so I got a mask now because this thing is dusty as hell cutting these things up. What I wanna do is I wanna line up all these pieces around the edge of this piece. I'm gonna have about an inch gap, but I wanna get it cut for like some of these corners, just so it looks a little bit more aesthetic. And yeah, because there's just a bunch of pieces that are really just weird shaped. And I just want to make it look good, so that's what we're going to do.
So as it turns out, having a grinder with all this dust floating in the air is actually not a good idea if you care about your tools, because unfortunately mine died. Now luckily Milwaukee was real nice. I was able to send it in, get a new one under warranty, but I didn't have time, so what I needed to do was fix one of my old ones.
Okay, so I'm kind of disappointed about this. If you can see here, this thing's got full charge, and it's dead. Yeah, like this thing's less than a year old and it died. This is my old Makita that I've had like forever. Now the cord has a little bit of a short in it, so I'm gonna actually replace it with a new cord. But hopefully this thing will be able to save the day. But like less than a year and this thing's already dead. I know this is really hard on it, but it's kind of unacceptable. Luckily this is a pretty simple fix. It's just a couple screws. Off. There we go, pop that off. Now I just need to remember white on the right, black on the left. That ain't going nowhere. Okay. And no. Damn it. Well, so I'm dumb. I didn't plug in the new one. Alright. May not be the safest thing in the world, but that'll work.
So sometimes there's pieces that are just a little bit too thick for using an angle grinder. It works as a good tool to kind of cut in just a little bit to kind of get a good starting point, but I really needed to use my tile saw to cut this thing up. All I did is I changed out the blade for a masonry blade. That way I could actually use it on these flagstone material. Once I filled it up with a bunch of water, got it all ready to go, I would take it and then just go ahead and start cutting these things just like I would any tile. Thing is that this thing splashes a ton of water everywhere. Like, I'm covered in mud by the end of this thing. Like, I do one cut and I'm just coated in this crap. It's actually insane. But this is definitely one of the most efficient ways to do this, because it's one of the few ways that you can get some cuts on some of these really thick pieces of flagstone. Because otherwise you're trying to do it with a grinder and then hammering it, and half the time when you smack it, it breaks in half, and that's no good. But the one major benefit of using a tile saw is that it helps keep a lot of the dust down so that way you're not breathing it in. Problem is you're just coated in dirt the entire time.
Not bad. Oh man, that took forever.
I don't think there's anything I can say that's going to express just how difficult this was to do. Between all the different shapes and sizes of this flagstone, from different thicknesses to different widths to different angles, like different pieces, trying to get everything to fit just right was such a pain in the butt. Like, I spent so much time just looking for pieces that were close, or I'd be cutting a piece and then it would just crack in half and I'd have to start all over. Like, getting all these pieces to fit just right took such a monumental effort to get right. Like, it was insane. And I would not recommend that anybody go to this level with flagstone. I don't even think it's required. I probably could have just done some loose, gaps and just kind of loosely put it out. But once I started, I just couldn't stop. I couldn't help myself. I was laying this like as if it was tile. And it is most certainly not tile. But once it was all said and done, this thing looks really beautiful. I mean, the alignment of everything, how close everything is cut, like, it looks great. And I don't think any landscaper or anybody like that would have done this, no matter how much I would have paid them to do it. Because this took me well over a month to finish just by doing all these little cuts. And we're not even done yet. We still have to level this whole thing out.
Yeah, my dog already pooped here.
And if I had to do it all over again, I don't know if I'd go to this same level of attention to detail. There's a part of me that thinks that I would just try doing a shortcut, but the other part of me is really happy with how it turned out, and I can't imagine doing it any other way. I had this vision in my head of how I wanted it all to fit, and it came out almost like I had in my mind. I mean, nothing's perfect, and it's going to require a lot of work to get all these pieces leveled out, but eventually we'll get it to fit properly. But in the meantime, I'm going to take a moment to take all this in, because usually when I finish something like this, I just kind of glance over it and move on to the next step. But sometimes I see stuff like this and I'm like, I need to just take this in and appreciate all the work that went into it. I mean, it was a lot of work, but it turned out great.
So if you ever wondered if I have OCD, I'm going to use this as Exhibit A as to yes, I do. Anyway, this thing took me about a month to do all these cuts, and mainly just because I'm a perfectionist, but I think it came out looking pretty good. We still got to go ahead and put some edging in around this whole border. We still got to go ahead and put in some leveling agent underneath here and in between the cracks. So it's probably a whole nother 2 weeks away from being done, but hey, that's progress. You should see my camera right now. It's so filthy. I had to actually put it away for most of this because the dust is just insane.
So as it turned out, the next thing I decided to do was actually taking pond liner and putting it inside the garden boxes, basically to create a waterproof barrier between the wood and the soil, because as the soil just sits there on top of the wood, there's a lot of little microbes and things that can get in there and basically just make it rot out from the inside out. The pond liner also gives us the added benefit of creating a barrier so that the dirt isn't sliding out between the gaps in the garden beds, because they're not like perfectly sealed wood. It's just kind of sitting there to hold it in, and having this pond liner there keeps the dirt from falling out. It just keeps it cleaner overall when we're actually working with this thing. Only problem was I didn't order enough of the pond liner, and I actually had to get a whole nother set ordered, but the problem is it takes time to get here, so I ended up just moving ahead with the project. So I decided to move on to the edging. Now, the edging that I got was the stuff that you get from like Home Depot or Lowe's. It's the metal stuff. You break off the little tabs for it. Issue is that with this stuff is it's kind of flimsy. So when I went to go pound these stakes in and try to get it into the ground, I couldn't get it in deep enough. Like I would have had to have dug out these trenches in order to fit it all the way in. And I didn't want this lip here because I have dogs that are kind of old, as well as I'm really clumsy. So I know for a fact I would have tripped on this stuff. So I ended up deciding to just rip it all out because it just wasn't working the way that I wanted to. So then it was time to move on to leveling all the flagstone. And let me tell you, it was not easy, okay? As with most of my projects, these things take way longer than you originally planned for because, well, I wasn't really planning on having to level each piece individually, piece by piece by piece. I mean, it was painstakingly annoying trying to get this thing perfectly level. Basically, what I ended up doing is I used the thickest pieces that I had, since I already knew that they were at the right level according to the string levels that we did earlier, and I would just bring up the smaller pieces to that level. Problem is that the bottom of these pieces aren't perfectly flat, like nothing is perfectly even. Luckily, that's where the decomposed granite comes in, and it makes it a little bit easier to do because there's a little bit of give and take. You can kind of wiggle it around. But the other issue I ran into is that some of these gaps were just a little bit too tight, so I'd have to come in there and cut it back open with the angle grinder, and sometimes when I would do that, it would actually break the piece in half and I'd have to cut a new piece. Like, every time you're working with this kind of stuff, it's very unforgiving. And I don't know if it's just because there's like layers to this flagstone, but sometimes I'd be doing this and it would just chip and fall apart. Like, it was just a very common thing with this stuff, and it was very frustrating, especially when I'm like, I've got this piece that's cut perfectly, it fits great, and then boom, I cracked it in half. Like, very annoying, but like, it's okay. It's just part of the deal when you're working on this stuff. Like, eventually, when I'm going through here and I get it all nice and tidy, it looks great. It's nice and level, everything's even, all the lines are gapped really well, so that way we'll have enough space to actually fill it in later when we go to do all the grout in between. Well, it's not really grout, we're just going to put decomposed granite in between, but it works kind of like how grout does with tile. So it may not be the perfect thing, but like, yeah, it came out pretty good so far.
Yeah, sometimes it's nice just to watch the sunset. Sometimes you got to remember just to take a breath. Even though I'm nowhere near done, the sun's going down, it's actually a really nice day. It rained a little bit from that hurricane, but it's actually kind of nice and peaceful out.
But even after that little break, we still had to get back to work. Now it's time to go ahead and lay in all of our decomposed granite in between all the grooves. Pretty much all I did is I would lay it out in piles and then I'd sweep it in with a broom. Now, some places the gaps were a little bit too tight and I couldn't get it in there, so I'd have to use the grinder just to kind of open it up a little bit so I had a little bit more space. But other than that, it was pretty simple. We basically just swept around until we found anything that was a problem. And boy, did I find problems, as I usually do.
So this spot's actually really low. This whole section here is going to have to be re-leveled because of this piece. So I'm probably going to end up cutting that out, putting a new piece in there, and then leveling it all to this. Fun times.
Now, it may sound simple on paper, but in reality, what it meant was that I was going to have to level out all the pieces surrounding the piece that I needed to cut. Because as soon as I cut it and I change that, that becomes a high spot, and then we have a bunch of low spots everywhere else. Now, making this thing fit, you have to kind of finesse it a bit. You have to kind of figure out where are the low spots, where are the high spots, and just kind of even it out. It's kind of a pain, but it's very doable. It just takes time.
That's much, much better. Yep, that feels way better. Got another low spot right around here. Kind of like sinks in right down in this area. So I guess I'm gonna have to just kind of raise it up a little bit.
Now, it may not look like much of a change, but it felt drastically different when I walked on it.
It's a lot better. Yep, one more low point, so that feels pretty good. Cool.
So luckily, that was the last of the low points that I could find. Everything else was relatively level, and sweeping this stuff into the grooves really made this whole thing come together and look way, way better. It felt a lot more sturdy. It didn't feel like the pieces were shifting as much because it was kind of helping to lock everything in. The thing that's actually going to lock it in completely is when we get the edge in. But before we do that, I actually just got my new pond liners in for this long bed as well as the tiny square one. And they went in really smoothly. I didn't really have too many issues getting them in there. Basically just stapled them in like we did the other one and put the tops back on. Very simple stuff, and this should hopefully make these beds last a lot longer than they would have otherwise.
Ow. That fucking hurt.
But now that that's over, it's time to go ahead and work on cutting out all this excess liner. As you can see, I used a carpet blade to do this, and this is the fastest way to dull any knife that you own. Like, this thing was so dull by the end of this, it's insane. So I wouldn't suggest using a good blade here.
Oh, that sucks.
Now, the method that I use for doing the edges is what I like to call using what you have, and that's a lot of dirt. Pretty much what I did is I took whatever dirt I had and I would line up the edges to kind of create like a smooth gradient from the flagstone to the dirt. And that was like, it was a little bit tricky to get it just right. I kind of spreaded it out because I didn't want it to be too obvious, but I wanted it to kind of slightly roll off so that way there was no edge. Then I would take the compactor, it was just one of those hand ones, and pound it into the ground and level out any spots that were low until I felt that it felt pretty good. And I just carried this on throughout the entire edge of this entire Flagstone patio. It was a lot of work trying to go through there and kind of get it all leveled out, but by the time I was done with it, the flagstones were basically locked in place. Like it felt like they were not going to move whatsoever. And because we had that good foundation with all that road base and everything else underneath it, this shouldn't move for a very long time, if ever. Like, we may have to occasionally come back and actually like re-level it, maybe with a little bit of decomposed granite or something, but other than that, like, they should be pretty dang good for quite a long time, at least for as long as I'm gonna be here, because I tell you what, I don't ever want to have to do this again because this was a ton of work. But once it was done, all I had to do was basically rinse off all the dirt, and if I found any spots that were missing stuff inside the grooves, I would just add a little bit more decomposed granite and sweep it in. I basically did this throughout the entire thing just to kind of find any spots where it was just like washed out a little bit, because sometimes when you run it through the hose, it washes away some of the finer stuff, and then we could just get some of the bigger pebbles in there, and it worked out pretty good. I mean, it looks really good on this side, and I did the same thing carried over to the other side as well. But now it's time to start working on these trellises.
Alright, cool.
Now, the one thing that I didn't know when I started this was that there are different gauges of wire, of chicken wire, different gauges of wire for this fencing stuff, and different thickness of poles. And it turns out that using the stuff that they sell at Lowe's is just not going to cut it, because the first one was way too flimsy. The second one we got was like 14 gauge, and I tried hooking it up, and even that was far too flimsy. It was just not gonna work.
Okay, so this is a prime example as to why you need to be careful looking at stuff on Instagram, because a lot of those arches that we saw done were done with some like really cheap wire, and it just wasn't strong enough. Turns out what you really need is cattle fencing. Let me show you why. So this stuff I got at Tractor Supply, and it's probably about $27 a piece, but it's 4 gauge. It's really thick, it's really strong. It'll be able to support all the weight of like melons, cucumbers, stuff like that. So this is gonna be way stronger than that chicken wire stuff that we had that was, you know, it was decently thick. I think it was 14 gauge, but that's just not enough. This will actually get the job done. So now I got to go ahead and try to unwind these things and plop them on here. Hopefully these things will be able to hold the weight, but We'll find out.
Little did I know the hardest part was actually going to be bending this cattle fencing into the proper shape of an arch. This stuff is pretty tough and it's pretty hard to get into that shape just right. And then not to mention that hooking it up to these flimsy ass poles was just not going to work the way that I had hoped. I tried it, I got them on there, but it just wasn't good.
So we ran into a little bit of a problem. These little posts here are a little bit too weak. It's because originally I thought it was going to be that other type of grating and it wasn't strong enough. So we're actually going to move up to one of these kind of posts. It's a little bit stronger, it's a little bit thicker. We're just going to basically hammer it down into the ground there and use these, because hopefully these won't flex as much as these do, because it doesn't take much and they just kind of bend out of shape. So we'll see what happens. We're just going to give it a shot and see how it goes. So now what I'm going to do is, when I'm pounding these things in, I'm trying to get this piece to basically be flush with the ground. I actually ended up hitting it in a little bit lower. Luckily, we've got about 10 inches of road base. Well, actually, we did a lot more than that on top of the 2 to 3 inches of the gravel. So we should be fine without actually hitting through that plastic sheeting we had underneath. But yeah, I'm just going to take this and hammer it down until we get about there.
Now, when it comes to actually hammering this thing down, I ended up using a mini sledgehammer, but they sell a tool that you can slide on top to pound it in. But a hammer works just as fine. It's quite the workout, especially if you have bum shoulders like me. Like, it'll go in eventually, but man, it's a hell of a workout, that's for dang sure. But as far as actually getting them to the same height, I kind of just eyeballed it. I just needed to get it close. This isn't rocket science. This is a pretty simple process. It's just trying to make it so it looks pretty decent and that there's enough sticking out of the ground to actually support this thing. They seem to have like a little bit of wobble to them right now, but when we put the dirt into these boxes, that's going to secure it completely to where it won't move like at all. It's going to be in there like so good it's not even funny. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to take these things out even if I wanted to. Now, when it comes to actually securing these things to the post, it's really simple. They use these little things called like hog rings, and you basically just take some pliers, wrap it around, and snap it in place. It works really well.
So let me show you why this is such a good deal, going to one of these wholesale landscape places, because I got this entire truck full of garden soil for all of $50. Like, good luck getting that deal at Home Depot or Lowe's. I'm just saying, 50 bucks. They play Minecraft in real life. So now I just got to get all this stuff into those beds. Basically, I'm going to end up mixing this with the soil that I already have back there, while also simultaneously getting rid of that giant ass pile that's just taking up space in the back of my yard. Alright, let's go get this stuff off.
So one thing I didn't plan on was the fact that all the soil that we dug out from the yard actually contained a bunch of bugs that are really bad for the garden, and I needed to sift through this stuff to try to get that stuff out of there.
So for anyone wondering what I was doing when I was sifting, I was looking for these little guys, these little grubs. They're disgusting little creatures, but basically I've been trying to find them inside the dirt and filter those guys out, because we definitely don't want those in the garden. Basically, I'm just moving this stuff around with a shovel and looking for movement, seeing if I see anything that resembles a grub and then ripping it out. But it's kind of tricky, but for the most part the soil's good. I've grown a lot of things in this dirt before, so I really don't want to mess with trying to buy a whole bunch of garden soil. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and take what we got from the truck and plop it in here and mix it all up.
So the reason that we're using a mixture of my soil as well as this garden soil is because the soil I had is actually really good. It's a combination of like clay, sand, and just regular dirt and a little bit of small rocks. Hopefully those rocks will help a little bit with the drainage, but then I would mix it in with some of this garden soil to kind of add a little bit more nutrients in there, like nitrogen and stuff like that. And over time, like, we'll be able to change this as we need to, as stuff erodes and everything like that. And if we really wanted to do this like the way that you would technically do it, we could have used like twigs and sticks and brush and stuff like that underneath, and that would have definitely helped with the drainage a bit. But the problem is I had this giant mound in the back of my yard, and I really needed to use as much of that as possible, because I don't know how the hell I'm going to get rid of that thing. Like, it's massive. It's probably like 15 yards worth of dirt. Like, it's crazy. And this was one way to kind of recycle some of that dirt and kind of put it back to good use. And I knew that it worked good for growing vegetables because I've used it before, and I was able to grow stuff literally just by putting it in the dirt. Like, with nothing added, just boom, in the dirt and good to go. So I was pretty confident that no matter what I did here, I was going to be able to grow vegetables because my dirt alone is good. So you mix it with this garden soil, it's going to do even better. And I mean, could you imagine how expensive it would be if I ended up just buying garden soil to fill this thing up? Like, that would have been a ton of money because I used a good portion of the dirt that I had in that pile just to fill these 3 garden beds. So if I did purely garden soil, I probably would have been so broke from this entire thing. Like, that's a lot of garden soil. So hopefully this thing will work and we'll get some good vegetables out of it.
Well, now all I gotta do is get this thing nice and cleaned up and get some seeds in it. It's a nifty little guide you got there.
Thanks. Let me get some light on it.
So now we're basically trying to figure out where we're gonna put all these plants.
So here's the thing about me and gardening. I've always just taken seeds, put them in the ground, and grew whatever I could grow. This is the first time we've actually tried to plan this stuff out, and let me tell you, gardening goes deep. Like, it's a rabbit hole you really don't want to fall in.
Little Polly wanted to help out. He's just curious. So right now what we're doing is we're just gonna plant some seeds. We're gonna put some watermelon here because we want it to grow up here.
Okay, do I do 2 at a time or 1?
I would do 1 seed per hole.
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
Okay, let's go. Pretty
The first
babies.
seed
1,
going in.
2, 3, 4. Do we cover it?
Yep, cover it up. Yep, that's it. And then soon we'll have some fruit. Maybe.
Yeah, because this is expired, but we'll see and put it to the test and see what happens.
Yeah.
3 inches is about here. 2.
You heard that, boys? That's 3 inches.
Yeah, just get a girl who don't know math and measurements well. Boop. It's like Stardew. I've been practicing.
You enjoying this,
Let me help you. If I had thumbs, I'd be in there with you.
This is for the onions.
Whoa, these tiny little babies. Tiny babies. Looks like charcoal. Wow, this is so cool. I've always wanted to do this.
Now you're finally doing it.
I know, it's actually really neat, and I'm learning a lot. Hear that, lady who didn't let me have that dog? I want to take care of stuff.
Well, these are weird looking seeds.
It's so weird how tiny seeds are.
Yeah.
You know, what they can produce. Like, what an incredible thing.
Now it's time to become Dwight.
Technically?
Because it's beets.
Like little starburst. Want to see?
Yeah, that's neat.
Oh, you didn't. It was like, what hole? Okay.
Gotta do the jalapenos living in Texas, you know what I'm saying?
Hey, what's up? Represent. Just kidding.
Okay.
Maybe I should have given it. These bad boys are gonna be so delicious. Look at these little babies. 1, 2, 3. That might be too many. I don't know if they're gonna be finger licking good. You know what I mean? Like, maybe I should do a different vibe here. Hold up.
Now we're just planting the last little bits in the main box. These are gonna be the pretty ones though, so it's gonna have all the nice flowers with colors and stuff. So hopefully it'll bring us some bees and maybe some fruit if we're lucky. Hey, dude, what are you doing? You having a good time?
I hope these aren't too close to the wall.
You should be okay.
Should I just soak it until it's all wet on top?
Yep, get it wet. We need to get it all wet, get it nice and soaked. So now it's all nice and watered, and the big question is, how much did this all cost us? If there's one thing I love doing is spending thousands of dollars to make 50-cent vegetables. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I didn't look.
Are you ready for this? Because I have the totals.
Oh, you have it like written down on
I
the...
have it all written down.
Why do you have this stack with you then?
Because this is how much dang receipts we got.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of
Okay.
stuff.
Okay.
So if you had to guess, what do you think it costs just for the materials? No, just the... Oh,
You're okay to fly. Someone's scared of wasps.
I have a problem with wasps. I've been stunning out.
Okay.
So okay, the landscaping company, everything we bought from the landscaping company.
Okay, gotcha.
That includes the stone, road base, gravel, and then the dirt that we put in here, the garden soil.
Landscaping company, I'm gonna go with like maybe like $4,500.
Wow, that's generous. No, actually, $28.05.
Whoa.
And 5 cents. Yep.
Wow, what the fuck?
Yep. But that's
Where's
just
the-
that one area. So, and then we
Okay.
had the 2 rentals.
Right.
So, how much do you think that cost us for the skid steer and the little paver pounder thing?
$600?
Pretty close. It's $554.
Okay.
So not too bad. especially considering what we got. So then what do you think we spent in supplies? And the supplies includes these garden beds, that's wood, screws, any materials we needed, anything that we spent for building.
$400. Okay, 700. Whoa.
This also includes trellis.
Oh, okay. Then maybe like 1,000.
Also the underlayment,
Oh yeah.
weed barrier,
$1,250.
a little more.
Wow. Okay. Okay, so maybe like my 5,000 was pretty accurate. Let me think. Let's say 1,400.
It was $1,828
Okay.
and 68 cents.
Okay, so my original guess, let's remember what I said earlier because I don't
Yeah.
remember, but let's say I'm really close now.
So what was your total that you thought for the whole thing, to get this whole thing done? What did you think?
Originally,
total?
I think when we were talking about earlier today, I think I said like 5,600.
I mean, that's pretty close. It was $5,188.46
Okay.
to grow some vegetables.
Well,
Well, also, yeah, we got a patio.
okay, we
too,
got like
so,
a whole
yeah.
patio though.
True.
Also, like want to clarify that.
True.
I mean, it looks awesome, and there's like a lot of space to do stuff. I would just be curious how much it would cost had like we had a company do this.
Quotes that I got was anywhere from 10 to 15,000.
So we saved money.
Save money. Took us 3 months, but we got there.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Okay,
I
so
mean,
my guess was pretty close.
not bad though.
Overall.
Yeah. So pretty good.
Cool.
And believe it or not, we actually managed to get rid of that pile. So yeah, this thing was not cheap, but it was definitely worth every penny, because at the end of the day, we walked away with this thing with a nice patio and a fresh garden. So I can't complain too much. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be sure to see you in the next one.